10 Philosophy Terms and Concepts, Part 1. Epistemology. Epistemology is the study of knowledge. It delves into the nature of what humans know, the standards of justification we use, and the limits of knowledge in conversation with skepticism. Here are some common questions in epistemology. What does it mean to know something versus to believe something? Is belief enough, or must it also be true and justified? How do we distinguish knowledge from lucky guesses or mere opinion? What standards should we employ to evaluate knowledge? How much evidence, justification, reasoning, or persuasion is required before a belief qualifies as knowledge? Should standards differ depending on the subject or context? What is certainty? Can we know anything for certain? Is absolute certainty possible, or must we accept fallibility in all claims? If certainty is impossible, does that weaken knowledge, or should we embrace our epistemic limits? Where does knowledge come from, and which sources can we trust? Do we gain knowledge through sense perception, reason, memory, testimony, or innate ideas? How should we judge the reliability of different sources, such as news, scholarship, or social media? Metaphysics. Metaphysics is a core branch of philosophy which explores the fundamental nature of reality, being, and existence. Here are some common questions. What is considered real? How do we evaluate such a characteristic? Is virtual reality real? Is a simulation real? Is Harry Potter real? Is the past real? How about the future? What does it mean for something to be possible, impossible, actual, necessary, or contingent? Could Aristotle have been a doctor instead of a philosopher? Could he have never existed at all? Could someone else have been Aristotle? What is the nature of space and time, of the mind and body? Is space-time simply a framework humans use to measure, or is it part of the actual fabric of reality? How does the mind interact with the body? Are they separate substances, conjoined aspects, one physical and the other non-physical, or both physical? Do we have free will? Does free will conflict with causal determinism? If everything is determined by prior causes, can we truly make free choices? Can moral responsibility survive in a deterministic universe, or do we need some concept of freedom to justify blame and praise? Aesthetics. Aesthetics is the philosophical study of art, beauty, and aesthetic experience. It explores how humans create, perceive, and evaluate art and beauty, and what makes something aesthetically valuable or meaningful. Here are some common questions. What is beauty? Is it objective or subjective? Is beauty a quality in objects, or is it based on human perception and taste? Can there be universal standards of beauty, or is beauty entirely relative to culture and time? What makes something art? Is art defined by the creator's intention, by certain formal qualities, by its power to express emotion, or by being recognized within an artistic community? Can everyday objects, digital media, or performances all count as art? What is the nature of aesthetic experience? Is it about detached contemplation, about pleasure, about emotional engagement, or about imaginative immersion? Can natural scenes, architecture, or fashion provide aesthetic experiences alongside traditional arts? How do we evaluate works of art? What makes one piece of art better than another? Are there objective standards such as balance, unity, and expression, or is judgment purely a matter of taste? Can critics be right or wrong, and how do moral flaws in art affect its aesthetic value? Ethics. Ethics is the study of right and wrong, good and bad, and how we ought to live. It examines moral values, duties, virtues, and the reasons we should act one way rather than another. Here are some common questions. What makes an action right or wrong? Should we judge by consequences, by rules and duties, or by character and virtue? Where do moral reasons and authority come from? Are morals objective facts, products of universal agreement, or grounded in human flourishing? What motivates us to act morally? Is it emotion, culture, or something else? How do we resolve moral conflicts? How should we weigh competing values like justice, rights, and welfare? What do we do in the dilemmas where any choice leads to harm? How should partiality to family, friends, nation fit with impartial concern? What is moral responsibility? Do praise and blame require free will? How do intention, negligence, ignorance, or luck affect responsibilities? Can groups such as corporations and institutions be morally responsible, or only individuals? Logic. Logic is the study of correct reasoning and argument. It analyzes the structures that make arguments good or bad. It clarifies key notions like validity, soundness, and entailment. Here are some common questions. What makes an argument valid or sound? When do the premises guarantee the conclusion, and when are they merely good support? How do we test arguments for hidden assumptions and contradictions? What forms of inference do we have, and when are they justified? How do deductive, inductive, and abductive reasoning differ? When is it rational to generalize from evidence, project patterns, or infer the best explanation? What role do language and formal systems play in reasoning? How do symbols, definitions, and logical rules track truth, entailment, and contradiction? How do ambiguity, vagueness, and context affect validity in everyday arguments? What are the limits and pitfalls of logic? What should we learn from paradoxes and results that show limits to formal systems? How do we avoid fallacies and reason responsibly with uncertainty and incomplete information? A priori. When knowledge is a priori, it can be justified independently of experience. Meaning you don't need to go out and physically check the world to know it. You can derive it from reasoning, understanding, or reflection alone. For example, I've made a new friend. His name is Henry. Henry tells me that he has a cat. I don't know what breed of cat he has. For that, I need to go to his place and check for myself. However, I do know, a priori, that Henry's cat is an animal. By definition, every cat is an animal. A posteriori. When knowledge is a posteriori, it can only be justified through experience, observation, and checking the world directly. You cannot simply reason it out or rely on definitions alone. You need empirical evidence. To know the breed of Henry's cat, I must see it, perceive it, observe it via physical experience. Materialism. In philosophy, materialism is the idea that everything, including the mind, is fundamentally physical. Thoughts, emotions, and consciousness are thus products of the brain's activity, like how digestion is a function of the stomach. From this view, science, in particular neuroscience, will eventually explain the mind completely. Idealism. Idealism is the view that reality itself is rooted in the mind or consciousness, not in matter. What we call the physical world depends on the state of being perceived by either us individual subjects or a universal mind. Idealists argue that objects exist only as ideas in the minds of either humans or God. They put consciousness as the core foundation of reality. Dualism. Dualism proposes that mind and body are two fundamentally different things. The material, physical body on one hand, and the immaterial, non-physical mind or soul on the other. Dualists claim that while the body is extended matter, the mind is a thinking substance. Consciousness is therefore unique and cannot be reduced to brain processes. Quote of the day. A wise man proportions belief to evidence. David Hume.